biblical account of Exodus, the 10 plagues of Egypt, are a pivotal moment in the history of Israelites. These plagues, inflicted upon Egypt by God, demonstrated his power and authority and untimely led to the Israelites' freedom from slavery. The first plague, water turned to blood, struck at the heart of Egyptian life and culture. The Nile River, the source of Egypt's fertility and prosperity, was transformed into a gruesome, lifeless substance. The plague demonstrated God's power over creation and challenged the Egyptian gods, particularly Hapi, the god of the Nile. The second plague, frogs, brought a swarm of amphibians into Egyptian homes and fields. The frogs represented chaos and disorder, and their presence was a sign of God's displeasure with Pharaoh's refusal to let the Israelites go. The third plague, lice or gnats, brought a swarm of tiny, biting insects that infested both people and animals. This plague demonstrated God's power over the smallest creatures and highlighted the Egyptians' lack of control over their environment. The fourth plague, flies, brought a swarm of insects that infested the Egyptians but spared the Israelites in the land of Goshen. This plague demonstrated God's distinction between his people and the Egyptian. The fifth plague, disease on livestock, struck at the heart of Egypt's economy and food supply. The death of cattle, sheep and other livestock demonstrated God's power over the natural world and the futility of Egyptian attempts to control it. The sixth plague, boils, brought painful festering sore upon the Egyptians and their animals. This plague demonstrated God's power over human and animal health and highlighted the Egyptians' vulnerability to his wrath. The seventh plague, hail, brought a devastating storm that destroyed Egyptian crops and livestock. This plague demonstrated God's power over the weather and the natural world. The eighth plague, locusts, brought a swarm of insects that devoured what remained of Egypt's crops. This plague demonstrated God's power over the natural world and the futility of Egyptian attempts to control it. The ninth plague, darkness, brought a palpable supernatural darkness that lasted for 3 days. This plague demonstrated God's power over light and darkness and highlighted the Egyptians' dependence on their gods. The 10th plague and final plague, the death of the firstborn sons, was the most devastating of all. The Israelites, who followed God's instructions and marked their doorpost with blood of a lamb, were spared. This plague demonstrated God's power over life and death and ultimately led to the freedom Israelites from slavery. The 10 plagues of Egypt demonstrate God's power, authority, and concern for his people. These plagues, while devastating for the Egyptians, ultimately brought freedom and redemption to the Israelites. The story of 10 plagues remains a powerful reminder of God's love and sovereignty for his people.